Hi, my name is Riley Dahlberg, and this is Collision Class College History. Today we're going to be talking about the industrialization and urbanization of America. Industrialization, or the development of industry within a country, took place in America from the beginning of the Industrial Revolution in the 1700s. But it grew exponentially as time went on and inventions became better, becoming most popular between the 1850s to 1940s. Industrialization and urbanization are what set up our modern economy and cities, so understanding where they came from can be important to understand where we are going next.
Inventions made production of goods easier. There are three major innovations that pioneered industrialization and urbanization, one of which were railroads. Railroads were not a new invention, but they did do a lot to add to the manufacturing rates of products. Railroads were making it easier and faster to deliver resources, goods, and people all over the country, including factories. The assembly line, coined by Henry Ford in 1913, served the purpose of expediting the production of his automobiles. Assembly lines would see a line of workers surrounding a conveyor belt. Each worker had a specific purpose and job. The last main invention, and quite possibly the single most important invention ever created, electricity. Electricity allowed workers to work far longer than they could ever before. Factories would be running 24/7, which made it possible to double the amount of production created every day, which led to sky-soaring profit.
Factory owners were able to gain more wealth from the higher rates of production. This resulted in a higher concentration of capital, meaning those who had enough to start a factory got more and more and more money and could open more factories. But those who couldn't afford to open a factory stayed at that current wealth level. As a result, there were more monopolies as well as more labor unions and workers' rights strikes.
Along with all the new ever-growing factories came workers. All these new job opportunities made America seem more feasible to the average citizen and immigrants. Loads of new immigrants moved to the U.S. seeking work in our ever-abruptly appearing factories. All of these new citizens need places to stay, so they moved to the cities. This led to two things: population growth and cultural mixing.
Let's go to the thought bubble. This was the introduction of modern cities. The cities is where all this industrialization took place and therefore the beginning of urbanization. There needed to be a lot of infrastructure for all these people. So things had to be built such as sewage, roads, water. The British author, Rudyard Kipling, when he visited Chicago in 1889, said, "The rise of cities, the evolution of American immigration, the transformation of American labor, the further making of a mass culture, the creation of great concentrated wealth, the growth of vast city slums, the conquest of the West, the emergence of a middle class, the problem of poverty, the triumph of big business, widening inequalities, battles between capital and labor, the final destruction of independent farming, breakthrough technologies, environmental destruction, industrialization created a new America." Thanks, Thought Bubble.
All these new people moving for work needed places to stay, so cities were booming. The census of 1920 found that more Americans were living in cities than those living in the country, for the first time in the country's history. New York went from a population of 500,000 to over 3.5 million in only 5 decades. Similarly, Philadelphia rose from the population of 100,000 to over 1.2 million. A vast majority of these citizens were immigrants. In 1870, America's population was 40 million. Only 30 years later, in 1900, the population had grown to over 75 million, roughly a third of which was due to coming immigrants. So cities were a big deal.
Haven't cities always existed in history? Well, that's right past me. Cities have existed for as long as civilization has existed. But what made these different was the absolute quantity that people could live in them, as well as these being the first of its kind in America.
Now it's time for the mystery document. This is my shock pen. There are hundreds of miracles within a single machine. Americans calmly explain these with mathematical formulas. Our difficulty is to learn, theirs to appreciate. We Latins, even the most intelligent of us, still count on our fingers and toes. But once we do learn, we shall surpass the Americano because we understand the spiritual significance of a machine. We see the beauty of combining gas, grease, and steel into a powerful, exact movement. We appreciate the material density of the universe. Was that Thomas Edison? Was it Charles Dickens? Thanks, Steve.
History is all about studying the past to implement it into the present to change the future. So, what can we learn about the past when it comes to industrialization and urbanization? Well, one major takeaway is that this is what set up our modern economy and way of life. If it wasn't for industrialization and urbanization, majority of our population would still work in agriculture, and we wouldn't have as many commodities that we get to just enjoy. Inventions as a whole would be a lot less developed, and as a result, we wouldn't have as much technology as we do now. But on the other side, there would be a more even distribution of wealth. More people could get by with just a normal day's work. So therefore, if we can think about what led up to industrialization and urbanization and where it took us, we can think about where it's going to bring us going forward as we continue to industrialize. We are doing it every single day, just at a slower rate. Should that rate be faster? Or should we take more precautions to make sure that things don't get out of hand? What type of balance do we need between industry and agriculture? And how much space do people really need? How should we structure our cities going forward? Should we just go as fast as we can to reap the benefits sooner, or should we take our time to minimize the costs it'll take? These are all important questions that we need to reflect upon when we were thinking about industrialization and urbanization.